Hello, my name is Courtney. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, like I said, my name is Courtney, and on this channel I discuss different true crime cases, and I love hearing y'all's thoughts, y'all's input. I love reading all of the comments. And if you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you so much for deciding to spend some time with me. Today's case happened in Australia, so if there's a slight chance anybody here is watching from Australia, make sure you say hi and let me know if you've heard of this case. I did so much research on this, trying to find as much detail as I possibly could. However, there was just like really not a lot of detail. I don't know why there's not more like pictures and, well, I don't want like pictures of like crime scenes or anything, but just like more pictures of who we're talking about and just like more information about, I love to go into like their childhood and stuff like that, but like every resource that I found, it was just like the exact same story. So I'm just going to go off of what I found. Anybody who knows more like in-depth detail about this case, if there's anything I said that's wrong, I'm sorry. If there's detail that I missed, I'm so sorry, but I'm giving y'all what I could find. Today we are talking about Carolynne Watson and Julian Buchwald. Carolynne was only 17, Julian was 25. They were dating. I don't know how long they had been dating up to this point, but it was long enough to where they were discussing getting married. So on March 4th, 2008, Julian decides he's going to take Carolynne on this beautiful romantic picnic on Julian's parents' farm in Buchwald, Australia. I think that's right. This property, it was like a very remote area. There was a waterfall. It was just going to be like a really sweet, romantic picnic. Sounds fun, sounds great, let's go. So Julian picked up Carolynne in the morning and they planned to be back around 3 p.m. Now, of course, they're just going on a little date. They didn't pack anything heavy. They had the clothes on their back and the food in the basket that they planned to eat on the picnic. So driving down the road to get to their spot, Julian notices a dead animal on the side of the road. And he gets out to investigate this dead animal, which I guess he did often, which is a little odd, but he does it often, so Carolynne doesn't think anything of it. But when he stopped the car, he was kind of like a ways up from the dead animal, so he has to walk a little ways back to look at it, and he was out of sight of Carolynne. So Julian sees the dead animal, he leans down to look at it. I don't know if he does this maybe to like, maybe get it off of the road, maybe he just like is a really avid animal lover and he wants to like bury the animal, get it off the road, I don't know. But he leans down to look at the animal and he hears footsteps running up behind him, and before he can react, he is hit over the back of the head and knocked completely unconscious. So back at the car, Carolynne's waiting, and like I said, she doesn't think anything of it because he does do this quite often, but he normally does it really quickly and he's back within like a minute or two. So it's been like 10 minutes and she's starting to freak out a little bit. She's like, okay, like where is he? I'm getting a little worried. So she's like, okay, I'm going to get out of the car. I'm going to go walk wherever he walked to and find him. Make sure he's okay. Make sure he's handling the situation okay. So she's about to get out of the car and she sees in the side mirror a person coming up behind her, and he's wearing all black. He's wearing black gloves and a black balaclava. I was like, what the heck is a balaclava? And I looked it up and I was like, oh, okay. I never knew the name of it, but it's those like masks that completely cover like your head. You can tuck your hair up in it and it covers like right here and your eyes are left open. So it's not like a ski mask where it's like this, it's like this. So I knew what that was. I just had no idea what the name was. Before Carolynne is able to react and lock her doors and maybe jump into the driver's seat and drive off, this person is able to open Carolynne's door, drags her out, and slams her down on the ground. He immediately ties her up, puts duct tape over her mouth, and throws her into the back of the car. This person then gets into the driver's seat of the car and drives off, abducting Carolynne. So poor Carolynne is absolutely terrified. She is obviously thinking the worst. She's thinking that she's about to be killed. And finally, after 6 hours of driving with her tied up and duct taped in the back seat, this attacker stops and drags her out of the car and throws her onto the ground. So then Carolynne hears this attacker digging a hole with a shovel. So in her mind, she's thinking, oh my God, I'm about to be assaulted, murdered, and buried in this hole. She's still duct taped, she's still tied up, she's unable to move to try to make a run for it while the attacker is distracted digging, so she does the only thing she knows to do and she just prays. Back home, Julian's mother is getting pretty worried because it's past the point of 3 p.m. that they said they were going to be home. They're not home. You know, she's a worried mother like any mother would be, and so she's kind of like looking outside, peeking around to see maybe they're going to come up the driveway at any minute. There's going to be an explanation for them being late and everything's going to be fine. But as she's peeking out the window and she's looking down the driveway, she notices a clear bottle that's like stuck in their wired fence, and it's got a piece of paper in it. So she immediately runs over to the bottle, opens it up, gets the paper out of it, and it's a note. And the note pretty much says, you know, these attackers, they have Julian, they have Carolynne, and as long as they mind their business and everybody behaves themselves, they will return Julian and Carolynne alive. The note also says to tell everybody that Julian and Carolynne are on vacation and threatens them to not talk to the police. The note then goes into some gruesome detail that I am not going to say here. If you want to research and find out, you can, but it goes into gruesome detail about what they're going to do to Carolynne if somebody talks to the police, which I'm sure if you use your imagination, you can kind of get the gist of it. They also say that they are going to sacrifice Julian to their gods if anybody talks to the police. Julian's mother is absolutely frantic. She immediately calls the police to report this, and the police takes it pretty seriously. They immediately start a search by air and land, but it's really, really hard because the area that Julian and Carolynne are supposed to be in is just like really, really thick bushes and heavy terrain and just a really difficult area to search. So while the search is going on, the police launch an investigation to try to find these attackers and figure out what their motive is as to why they would abduct Julian and Carolynne. According to the note, the police seem to think that there has to be some sort of connection to the family and the attackers, but Julian's parents, they cannot think of anything at all. They have no idea who would want to do this to their family, why they would want to do it. They have not had any sort of trouble with anybody, not like this anyway. So then Carolynne's parents are interviewed, and her father actually says that he also had a threatening note put on his front porch 10 days earlier. The note was not as intense and gruesome as the one that was on Julian's parents' property, but the note still reads, you know, mind your business. It was a threatening letter, threatening to make their lives a living hell, destroy their family, and it also noted that Christians were their enemies. So of course when Carolynne's father finds this note, he immediately reports it to the police, but nothing is done about it. It's chalked up to just a prank by like some kids or something. But now with the two notes and Julian and Carolynne missing, Carolynne's father starts to see that, like, oh my gosh, these notes are super similar. The handwriting is the same, and there are the same satanic symbols drawn on both notes. The symbols that were drawn was a symbol of a satanic cult that did human sacrifices. So after learning these details, the police are even more worried and concerned for Julian and Carolynne's safety. And they believe that, you know, this is a satanic cult. The motive of them being abducted was for human sacrifice. After 48 hours, no evidence has been found, nothing leading to finding Julian and Carolynne. So the news starts to spread around the town, and the church that Julian and Carolynne attend are in like constant prayer for their safe return. Police then go to interview the pastor of the church that the two attend, and the police kind of wanted to see like the pastor's views on the satanic cult thing. But surprisingly, the pastor did not think this was a satanic cult, and he didn't even think that the two ran away. He said the two were devoted Christians, and so like the physical aspect of their relationship hadn't yet begun, so like no sex before marriage kind of thing. To his knowledge, all they ever did was hold hands. The pastor goes on to say that he had a previous meeting with Julian and Carolynne, and they were discussing about wanting to get married, but they couldn't yet because Carolynne's only 17. So this makes the pastor believe that the two ran off to get married. So the police are like, oh, okay, we'll investigate that theory. But the more they look into it, the two did not pack anything else. They didn't pack any extra food. The only clothes that they had were the ones that they were wearing when they left, and their bank accounts had never been touched. So that theory kind of goes out the window. So at this point, the police truly believe that it was a satanic cult and the two were abducted for human sacrifice. The specific cult that the symbol was for, that was drawn on the letters, this cult was created in England in the 1960s and they had members all over the world. But there was no evidence of any members of this cult being in Australia, and the police had no previous record of like any crimes being committed that was connected to this cult. So now the police are scared that this cult is making its way into Australia and they wanted to do their first human sacrifice, so that's why Julian and Carolynne were abducted. So now the police, their mindset is kind of more towards they are searching for remains rather than finding the two alive. The area that Julian and Carolynne went missing was like extremely hot during the day and freezing temps at night, and like during the day, I mean maybe at night, I'm not sure, but definitely during the day there were spiders, there were snakes, and just really dangerous wildlife all over the place. So not only was it really super hard for police to get through this and investigators to try to find anything, but imagine how Julian and Carolynne are feeling being in these conditions for several days. Because the area was so remote, there was no witnesses, there was no tips and information coming in from locals. So the only motive and the only thing that the police can come up with was the satanic cult. But now police are thinking more like, okay, we cannot find any evidence of this cult being in the area. There's no previous crimes reported related to the cult. So maybe the letters were left as like a distraction for the police to start thinking it's this when really it's this. So police are not finding anything. They cannot find any trace of Julian and Carolynne anywhere. No remains, no evidence, nothing. But finally, 7 days after the two go missing, they are found and they are alive. They were found on the side of the road near this national park that was several miles away from where they were originally supposed to be. They were picked up by a farmer driving down the road, and the two, of course, were filthy, covered in mud. They were covered in bruises, cuts, blisters from the sunburn during the day. So police interview the two as soon as they can. And as far as police know, these attackers or single attacker or whatever, whoever did this, was still out there on the loose, and their main concern was like, oh my gosh, Julian and Carolynne were found alive. They're in here, you know, they're being investigated. So they're thinking that Julian and Carolynne's families are in danger of being the next victims. Carolynne is the one that's interviewed first, and of course she tells police everything that she knows. She describes after the attacker was finished digging the hole, he cuts off all of her clothes and leaves her tied up and naked. So she's assuming the worst, of course, and like I said, the only thing she knows to do is pray. So she's praying, and then it's like out of nowhere this attacker just runs away. Still tied up, she's still laying there unable to move, so she just kind of like lays there wondering like, oh my gosh, okay, this attacker, he ran off to get something or somebody else, and he's going to be back any minute to carry out whatever he set out to do. So after a while, she hears what she believes is Julian, and he's hollering out for her, and you know, she hollers back, Julian, is that you? And he says yes, and eventually he's able to wiggle his way over to her because he's also naked and tied up. So he wiggles his way over to her, and luckily he finds a knife that was obviously left there by the attacker, probably the same one that was used to cut off their clothes. So they kind of both work together. They're able to get themselves untied, and when they stand up, they notice that this attacker left a sleeping bag and some food behind. So they grab everything that they can and they take off. They're still completely naked, and they're suffering the extreme weather conditions of burning hot during the day, freezing cold at night, and they're all cut up from the thick bushes that they're having to go through. You know, they're barefoot, their feet are all torn up, they've got the blisters from the sunburn, so they're in really bad shape, and they kind of become confused during their venture through this forest, and they get lost and they end up right back where they started, where they were left with the attacker. So this is horrible. This is not good. They're terrified that like, oh my gosh, they're back in the same spot. The attacker, if he's still here, he's got to be close. He's going to know where we're at, and he's going to be back any minute. But luckily, Julian finds a backpack that they had brought with them for the picnic, and their clothes are inside. So, you know, their clothes are cut up and everything, but they're able to at least cover themselves a little bit with their torn up clothing. So, like I said, after 7 days, they are able to find the road that's near the national park. They stumble out into the road, and that's where a farmer that was driving down the road picks them up. So police know it is very, very critical to go to the exact place that the two were left at so they can investigate, because there's got to be a lot of evidence there. And luckily, police are able to find the spot that Julian and Carolynne were left at, and they do find a little bit of rope, they find the duct tape, and they find the knife. And they also found the shovel that was used to dig the hole. So they take it all in for evidence, and like, thank God, they are able to find the owners of all of these items. The only problem with this is that the owners of all of those items is Julian. So things are kind of not adding up. It's not looking good for Julian, because why would this attacker not, I know this sounds kind of bad to say, but why would this attacker not come prepared? Why would he not have his own supplies? Why would he just find these two victims and hope that they have some rope and some duct tape and a shovel with them so he can carry out whatever he wants to do? And Julian, why the hell are you taking some duct tape and some rope and a shovel on a picnic? Also, remember in the beginning, Julian was knocked over the head with something and unconscious. So of course he tells police he doesn't remember anything up to the point of him waking up naked and hogtied, because he was hit over the head. He was unconscious for several hours. But if you're hit over the head hard enough to be knocked out for like 6 or 7 hours, you would think there would be a pretty bad wound on the back of your head. Julian had something that you couldn't even barely see. It was like a little scratch, a little bruise, nothing adding up to being hit so hard you're knocked unconscious. Things aren't looking good, Julian. So detectives let Julian know his story's bullshit, they're not buying it, and it doesn't take long after that for Julian to fully confess. He lets police know it was all him, he's the only one that was involved, and he's even able to take police to the spot where they were left, and to the spot where he buried the supplies, the rope, the duct tape, all of the stuff that he needed to carry out this bullshit. He even buried a damn map. He lied to Carolynne, saying that he found this dead animal on the side of the road, and he used this as time to change and disguise himself into this attacker. He hogtied Carolynne and threw her in the back of his car and drove 6 hours north to this super remote national park. So that's why police couldn't ever find them, because they weren't looking anywhere 6 hours north. They were looking all around this really large area that the two were supposed to be at. Julian gives detail of how Carolynne was begging for her life and begging him not to do this. She has no idea, of course, that it's him, so she's begging this attacker to spare her life and has no idea that she is begging and pleading to her own damn boyfriend. Y'all, this case gets me so fired up. Julian tells police how he cut off Carolynne's clothes, dug the hole, and then he ran off so he could use that time to take off the disguise, probably bury it back wherever he had the other supplies, and then he takes all of his clothes off, ties himself up to make it look like that he was also attacked. But like, okay, now why? Why would you want to put your girlfriend through several days of thinking that she is going to die in a brutal way? And how are you able to look at your girlfriend and with a clear conscience go through this of her begging you not to do this, begging you to not kill her? Julian did all of this to try to have sex with Carolynne. Throughout the several days that they were missing, Julian was telling Carolynne that they needed to have sex to stay warm at night. And if they were doing it to stay warm and to, you know, have body heat so they wouldn't freeze to death, that they wouldn't be doing anything wrong in the eyes of God. But Carolynne sticks to her beliefs, and she does not believe in having sex before marriage, so she shuts that shit down for 7 days. And she denies all of his marriage proposals, which it's like, why the hell are you using this time to try to propose to me? We are naked, we're terrified, we're cut up, we're starving, we're burning up, we're freezing, we have blisters. What the hell? They were going to get married one day. Like I said, they had plans to get married, but they were kind of like conflicted on when, because Julian wanted to get married right away, probably so he could have sex with her. And then Carolynne, she wanted to finish school, and she was only 17, so she wasn't even old enough yet. So she wanted to finish school, probably turn 18, then get married. One of the most messed up things about this too is that they were never lost the entire time. Julian knew the whole time exactly where they were. He pretended to be lost for as long as he possibly could to try to use that time to convince Carolynne to either marry him or have sex with him, or both. He figured it would only take a couple of days and Carolynne would break down and end up at least having sex with him to stay warm. But girl stuck to her beliefs, good for her, and she shut that shit down. So after a week, Julian's like, well shit, this isn't working. Let's make our way to the road so we can be rescued. Police are probably like, what the hell, man? Julian was charged with unlawfully carrying away against one's will, abduction with intent to marry, abduction for sexual penetration, and theft. Carolynne was also hog-tied and thrown in the back of a car for several hours, so she suffered some pretty severe damage to her neck, her spine, and her hands. Julian was found guilty on all charges in 2009, but things must be really different in Australia because instead of being held for sentencing, he was let go on bail while he waited for the sentencing trial. But Julian knows, like, I'm about to get thrown in prison, I'm not sticking around for this shit, so he bolts. He somehow manages to get a fake Indian passport. He dyes his hair, his eyebrows, and he darkens his skin somehow. And it was absolutely ridiculous. But somehow he is able to escape the country. But he didn't make it very far. As soon as he landed, his identity was exposed and he was extradited back to Australia. His plan was to get to Germany where he had relatives and he was going to stay there. So Julian was sentenced to 7 years and 3 months for kidnapping Carolynne, but then an extra 6 months were added on for skipping bail and fleeing the country. And after 5 years and 3 months, Julian was eligible for parole. Now, like I said, that's the end of all of the information that I found. I don't know if he served his entire 7 years and 9 months or if he was granted parole after the 5 years and 3 months. But regardless, this was back in like 2008, 2009 is when he was found guilty. So 2022, he's out. I'm sure Carolynne is absolutely scarred and I'm sure she's suffering PTSD or something from this because that had to have been absolutely terrifying. For 7 days, she's trucking through the woods with her boyfriend thinking that this attacker is going to be around a corner and be back to kill them. I couldn't find anything on how Carolynne is doing now, how she recovered, how her life is now. She probably doesn't want anybody to know, which, girl, I don't blame you. But I do truly, sincerely hope that she is doing fine and Julian can fuck off. That is all I have for y'all today. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments. If you have any more information on this case, if you're from Australia, make sure to say hi. Give me a thumbs up on my videos. Don't forget to subscribe. And guys, please be safe. And I will see you next Tuesday. Bye.